This is the Rob Brown Show. Get Rob. Only on
The Fan Upstate.
Friday! Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen. The end of the week edition of the Rob Brown Show starts right now. Good to have you. Happy Friday, people. We are back. Late night last night as we were up in Sparkleburg. The Vikings of Spartanburg with the big win over the Rebels last night. That Vikings team is good, my dudes. We're going to break that game down later on. NFL Thursday Night Football. The Bengals removed the Dolphins from the undefeated category, and unfortunately, Tua Tagovailoa was removed from the game. And yes, we are going to talk to that, including a bunch of sound from that game, from the people involved with the injury and more. That's coming up here in just a couple of minutes from right now, because that situation is ugly as hell, and we absolutely have to talk about that. Gonna look ahead to the weekend upcoming in college and pro ball. Last night, the Gamecocks of South Carolina get a 50-10 win and cover up the spread and then some against SC State. Back-to-back impressive offensive showings from the Gamecocks, but both of those against FBS-level teams. Will they be able to bring that same momentum into their game against Kentucky next weekend with the long week to prep for it? We're going to talk about that coming up shortly. Clemson v. NC State going to play under the lights tomorrow night down in Clemson. And I've got some good news. While the wind and rain is on its way here right now, by Saturday evening and into Sunday, looks like we can have some pretty good weather coming our way. So we'll talk about that and how that impacts, or shall I say, not impacts the game coming up. All of that and more, because we are packed today. T2, the Timidator, Tim Snow, running the boards for us. One more day before the great one makes his return on Monday. What's up, big fella?
Hey, how you guys doing today?
How do you feel about those 14, 15-hour days like we pulled yesterday, buddy?
I enjoy being here and enjoy doing the work. So, this is what I went to school for. This is what I like to do. So, love it.
Did they tell you when you went to school that you would be in the building from 8 a.m. until 10:30 p.m.? Was that part of the training?
No, they didn't.
I didn't think so.
No, they didn't.
I didn't think so.
But, I mean, even if I wasn't here, I'd probably be at my home studio doing stuff, so.
Yeah, here's the reality. Like, I can gripe about long days, but in fairness, I spent 3 hours talking about football. I spent 5 hours writing about football. I spent 2 hours yesterday podcasting about football, and then I spent 4 hours calling football. Life's pretty good.
Yeah.
Life's pretty good.
Yeah. It's fun when you're doing something you love to do.
Yes, so. Indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, the Atlanta Braves have a 3-game stand at home at Truist against the New York Mets. The Bravos had tied up this division as of yesterday, but then found a way to give one back to the Washington Nationals, just their 54th win on the season. And the Braves go into this 3-game series 1 game back of the New York Mets. A win tonight would bring their records level. 2 wins would put the Braves a game up on the Mets. At the end of the year, after this 3-game series, which is today, tomorrow, and Sunday, scheduled right now, I don't believe Ian will have that much of an impact on Atlanta, so it should be fine. The Braves will have 3 against the Mets. Then they will take on the Marlins to wrap up the series. The Mets have 3 with the Bravos. Then they take on the Nationals. This division is very much up in the air, and we're going to talk about that coming up later on in the show. What do the Bravos need to do to walk out of this 3-game set with a 1, preferably 2-game lead if they can take the sweep of all 3? We're going to break that down because this is a dream series. The Mets are going with the top of their rotation, the Braves with the top of theirs. It is the best v. the best, and the 2 seed in the National League hangs in the balance, ladies and gentlemen. So we're going to get into that later on in the show. But as much as it is not a fun series, as much as not a fun moment last night, I want to get into what happened with Tua Tagovailoa last night. And I'm going to run through a bunch of sound here, T2. So heads up, follow me if you don't mind. Let's start with clip 3E on the roster. Clip 3E on the roster is the sound from Tua Tagovailoa getting sacked last night. Al Michaels on the call.
Tua rolling left with the grain, and down he goes. Slung down at his own 48-yard line. Josh Tupu. And, well, we saw last week, and he went down, he got up, was wobbly. The training staff comes out. And, of course, the last thing the Dolphins wanted to see. I mean, last week it looked for all the world. Everybody thought head injury, concussion, passed the protocol, came back second half, led him to a victory.
And Al Tupo slams him to the ground. I mean, you're thinking about the back, the ankle, but he gets thrown to the ground.
Again, wrenching that back, which was the issue last week.
Yep.
So they work on him. We'll step away for a moment.
So I have obviously a strong reaction to that. We go back to last week when Tua Tagovailoa got thrown into the ground in the Dolphins game. He comes up and he's wobbly. The Dolphins said that it was a lower back and ankle injury, and that's what made Tua wobbly. Now, I am not a brain doctor. I did not go to brain doctor school, nor did I stay in a Holiday Inn Express last night.
Wouldn't that be a surgeon, a brain surgeon?
Yeah, but again, I'm not a brain dude.
Okay, just making sure.
However, you know who is a brain dude? Chris Novinsky. Chris Novinsky is a neuroscientist. Chris Novinsky is the founder and CEO of the Concussion Legacy Foundation, an organization run by Chris Novinsky that is trying to get rid of as much of the head injury issues in sports as they can. Chris Novinsky put up a tweet that said, that talked about the head injury to Tua Tagovailoa last week. It was disastrous. It was disastrous. And he pointed out, and I'm trying to go back and find the tweet. In fact, I think it's right here. He said, if Tua takes the field tonight, it's a massive step back for concussion care in the NFL. If he has a second concussion that destroys his season or career, everyone involved will be sued and should lose their jobs, coaches included. We all saw it, even though they know this wasn't right. Now, Nowinski went on to say that he took zero joy in being right about the situation because he was. Because last week after the play, Nowinski went on Twitter and said, look, that guy's got a concussion. The Dolphins can say what the Dolphins want to say, but that guy has a head injury. And if they put him out there again, a second concussion could ruin his brain and his career They can't do that. Well, Mike McDaniels, I'm going to go to clip 3D here, if you don't mind, please, Tim. This is head coach Mike McDaniels when he was asked after last week, what goes into making the decision to play Tua Tagovailoa, and here's how McDaniels answered.
That's told to me. It's not I'm making that decision. It's more that the medical professionals that are there with him at the time deem him fit to leave, and what goes into that. I wouldn't pretend to know. I just report the news.
Cool story, bro. Cool story, bro. Now listen, I don't necessarily blame Mike McDaniels. I will give Mike McDaniels the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he does just, quote, report the news, end quote. But that's got the feel of, one of the biggest problems in social media is people go online and they blast a bunch of bullboat across the internet, right? This is what's happening out there. And then somebody steps in and proves them factually inaccurate. That is to say, wrong, lying. And we have been conditioned that it is okay for people to just go, oh, no. I'm not saying that's what's happening. I'm just saying what other people are saying. No. You put it out there as a belief. I had this happen on Facebook a year ago with a father of a dear friend of mine that was Facebook friends with, who put something up that was factually, empirically, demonstrably incorrect. It was wrong. And I came with receipts. Well, actually, here's why you're wrong. This, A, B, C, here's all the evidence. You are wrong. And the pops came back and was like, oh, no, I'm not saying that's what's happening. I'm just saying that's what people are saying is happening. And I'm going, right. But you are putting it out there as if it is a belief. You are putting it out there as if it is factual, and you got your ass called out, and you're embarrassed that you got called out. So instead, you just go, well, I'm not saying that No, forget that. Own it. If you are going to put something out there, make sure it's right. And if you get it wrong, then go, you know what? That's my bad. I was wrong. Retract it, correct it, move on, right? That's the impression I got from Mike. Mike was like, well, other people were saying Tua's healthy. You're the head coach, dog. You're the head coach. Now, I get that you're not a neuroscientist, a brain doc. Neither am I. But, man, you know what you do have? Eyeballs, bro. Eyeballs. And every one of us who saw last week knew that this was screwed up. So then we had the injury itself. Give me clip 3C, if you don't mind, T2. This is Mike McDaniels on what he saw when he ran out onto the field to go see what went wrong with Tua.
I saw him lay down. I saw that it looked like he had some stressors going on with the impact of the hit. And then once I got out to the field, I knew right away that this was at least a concussion. What I was worried about was other things. On top of that, obviously I was very worried about his head, but you're wanting to make sure that all things with relation to the spine and back and all that stuff, you want to make sure that's okay. But it was very clear to me from the onset that he had I didn't really know the degree of, but I knew he had a concussion. He was asking for me, and then when he saw me, I could just tell it wasn't the same guy that I used to seeing. So
yeah, we know, we saw it, and listen, I'm 90% of the time that dude comes in and goes, hey man, listen, don't brag about how smart you are when you have the benefit of hindsight, right? It's easy to look back after something's happened and going, oh yeah, I would have known better, right? I'd have known better. I wouldn't have done that. It's like when a team calls a fake field goal and it gets blown up and it doesn't work. You're like, oh, I would have known better than to do that. But if it works, you're like, oh, what a genius call. What a genius. Don't sit here and go, ordinarily I'd say don't sit here and look back with hindsight and go how genius you are. But anybody who watched Tua's reaction to that hit last week knew for a fact that dude's brain got rattled. That's what happened. You can see him. I played in a charity basketball game about 5 years ago. I was still in relatively decent shape. I went up for a rebound, came down with the ball, holding on to another guy. Not the guy, the ball. Me and another guy both had the ball. And the hyper-competitive Rob Brown came up. I wanted that rebound in a charity basketball game. I'm like, no, dude, I didn't check in to not get boards. So I go to sling the ball and try to pull it from this guy. He goes to pull it from me. Well, this dude was a, professional wrestler, and he just slung me to the ground. And I went back of the head first into the floor. I mean, off the basketball floor.
Ooh, I know that hurt.
Yes. I remember hurt because I was out for about 3 seconds. And then when I came to, I was looking up. I stood up and I felt okay getting up off the ground. But when I got up the ground, my head was just like this. And I wobbled, went down again, got caught by a couple of my guys who had to carry me to the bench. I had a concussion.
Yeah, concussions suck, man.
Yeah, that's what happened to Tua. That's what it was. It was very, very obvious to see what happened to Tua. And I'm not the only one who felt that way. Let me get clip 3. No letter, just clip 3. Scott Van Pelt and Damian Woody were on SportsCenter with SVP last night, and they had a conversation about it.
I don't know. Tonight, just visually, it's just really difficult to see. And we talk about the fencing reaction, and you immediately recognize, I think, you know what that is. And you're like, oh, God, not again. And I mean, who gives a bleep about a football game in a moment like that?
Yeah, it's terrible, man. It's terrible. I'm sitting back, and we're all watching the game, man.
Of course.
And you could see that I was visibly shaking, just looking at that whole situation, because obviously, like you said, it is a fraternity. It's a brotherhood, and you don't want to see any of your guys being in that type of predicament.
So from here, the conversation, I'm certain, on all shows from this point forward, and in the morning, and radio, and all the rest, will be sort of what happens. And look, we don't know what we don't know about the medical situation, but there's an investigation from the league, the union, I should say, into this, and then this on top of it. And I'm not asking what should happen. I just wonder, where does the conversation go in the coming days?
Well, we know that the NFL is very reactionary. Things like this happen, especially in a primetime type of game. And again, we talk about the visuals, right?
Of course.
It's one thing you talk about it, but it's another thing when you're actually seeing video of these things transpiring right before your eyes. And so, again, like you just said, we're talking about it now, and it's going to be a topic of conversation for some time. And so it's going to, I'm real curious to see, okay, how does the NFL react now with all the conversations surrounding Tua and his injury?
So basically they said, look, this has got to start a conversation amongst the National Football League, and I agree with that entirely. It has to, right? The NFL felt like they had made major strides towards taking head injuries to football players, concussions, and CTE very seriously, but at the same time, it is the same NFL that when the CTE discussions started shaping up initially, they went and hired a public relations firm to come in and effectively defend them from accusations that they had been ignoring this to the detriment and danger of NFL players. The PR firm that they hired to do so was the same PR firm that was hired by multiple cigarette companies back in the 70s and 80s into the 90s to convince people that smoking cigs ain't that bad for you, right? It's not that bad for you. And it's a few years later, we're like, oh, what's that? It will definitely give you lung cancer and kill you.
Surgeon General warnings? Yeah. What?
Yeah, that's the same firm that the NFL hired to protect them from those situations. And again, that is why I went and I looked. I told you about the tweet from Chris Nowinski where he was like, it's a step back for concussion, etc. I went and I looked down the replies, right? I went down and looked at the replies. This is a man with a PhD in brain science stuff, right? Then he's got people.
The brain dude.
He's got people like at KCicale, KCICALE, hitting him up in the replies, who said, I'll take what the NFL's executive vice president says, but thanks for your input. It's like, yeah, no. Between you and random Twitter guy, I'm definitely going to take the side of the PhD and brain noggin stuff, all right? I just am. It's obvious, man. It's just obvious. I looked down the replies to Chris Nowitzki's tweet, and my goodness, I was stunned at the number of people that are smarter than the PhD brain scientist guy, right? At MP Dolphins fan said the Dolphins, NFL, and third-party neurologists all cleared him, and he said he didn't have a concussion, but I guess Chris, PhD on Twitter, knows better. And the reply is, you do know that he's actually a PhD in this, right?
Everybody with a computer keyboard and a computer is a genius.
I guess. Except the PhD brain guy.
Keyboard ninjas.
So I looked down through the replies, and they're gross, right? And there are a ton of Miami fans. And listen, for the record, I actually really like Miami Dolphins fans, all right? Every Dolphins fans I've ever met, they're all good people. They're not like Steelers fans and Cowboys fans that are like, they pride themselves on kind of being jerks. Dolphins fans are cool, man. They're chill, they're laid back. Except right now, when they are all up in Chris Nowitzki's tweets and they're like, well, the NFL cleared him, bro. It's like, yeah, but the NFL is known for taking steps that protect the bottom line while effectively creating a situation that puts their players into a negative situation. All right? They are known for that. It's what they do. They've done it forever. That's why the NFLPA is so important. That is why whenever there is a debate between the Players Union and the National Football League, I am always on the side of the Players Association until I have a reason not to be. My default position is with the NFLPA until they give me a reason not to be. This is bad. It's bad. It's a bad look. Right? At Don Colts fan replied, he didn't have a concussion. A third party evaluated him who was far more qualified than people on Twitter making a guess. Again, he's literally a PhD in brain injuries. And he's like, yeah, no, I'm telling you from here. That's a rattled noggin. I'm telling you from here, that's a banged up dome is what that is. And he's talking about the first game. He's not talking about last night. I don't know if you saw it, Tim Snow, but they rolled to a over. Two, his hands were locked in what they call a fencer's response.
Yeah.
His fingers were all like just stretched and bent. That is a key sign of a rattling of the brainstem, and that's where all the nerves that control your body run up into the brain. When that thing gets rattled around, you effectively lose motor function, and that's what happened to Tua last night.
For a second.
Yeah. Now, he did get taken to the hospital. He did get released to travel back with the team. He did have movement in all his extremities. He was able to communicate efficiently and effectively, et cetera, et cetera. But good God, that was a bad look for the NFL, a bad look for the Dolphins, a bad look for everybody involved at that point. One last clip, and then we'll take a break because we're off the clock. But give me clip 3F, if you don't mind, Tim. This is Emmanuel Acho telling a story about a game where he caught a concussion and got cleared to play.
For those that say, well, he cleared concussion protocol, I'll end with this story. I was playing a game on the road. I got a concussion, third play of the game, tackling the running back. His knee hit my helmet. Boom, concussed. They asked me a couple questions to clear concussion protocol. Hey, who's the president and what day is it? Well, duh, it's a Sunday because I'm playing a game right now. And who the president, that's not that hard. I've known that for the last 3 years. I finished the game. I went back home and had no idea which house was mine. I don't care if you clear concussion protocol, it doesn't mean you're perfectly healthy. And your eyes should tell you what a concussion test doesn't even need to.
Yep, that's fact. That's fact. And listen, he passed the concussion test. Cool. What's that test? What's that? Because if that's the test, hey, what day is it and who's the president?
And how many fingers? How many fingers do I got up?
Yeah. If that's how many fingers within 2 am I holding up right now? Like, that's not.
Are you seeing birds fly around your head like, the old Looney Tunes?
It's not a test, man. It's just a bad look. It really is just a bad look. All right, let's take a break. We come back. I want your thoughts on that. What were your thoughts watching what happened to Tua Tagovailoa last night? It's Friday. I don't ask you guys for much, but I want you on the show today. I feel like this discussion isn't one that I just want to have myself. I want y'all's thoughts on this. That was, I think, we see a guy catch a knee injury or an upper body injury and walk it off or get carried off, and you're like, oh, that's bad. There's something different about a head injury when a guy can't hold his hands up, right? So I want your thoughts. What was your reaction watching that last night? 844-326-3663. Looking for your phone calls on the Rob Brown Show in the Fan Upstate. All right, guys. My chief engineer called me during that segment, so let me go check what they need. I will be right back. Do not go anywhere because I want to keep this discussion going. Hang on there for me.
Oh, knocked me out. Clean out.
Yep. Yeah, it's
And I'm not sure if I had the same thing that he had, but I know everybody was scared because they thought they dragged me to the couch and like Tony was like, "Oh, we're about to call 911."
Yeah, that was rough.
It was pretty bad. You know, skateboarding's kind of like golf, though. It's a sport where you compete against yourself. Guys, live reads should be placed after service elements and stop sets. 15, live read. That's what I thought, but all right.
The Rob Brown Show rolls on. Couple of texts that have come into the Preferred Home Services text line at 71307. Hurricane Jeff has texted the show. Hurricane Jeff says, after seeing Tua hit the ground in the Buffalo game, I was like, for sure he's out at least 2 games. It was actually quite shocking to see him not just playing this game, but actually come back in that last game. I'm a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan as well as Hurricanes fan, but that was reprehensible on the part of the Dolphins. I'm going to tell you right now, the Dolphins come out of this looking bad. And I'll give you some more to that foundation. Remember the Brian Flores lawsuit, right? He accused Stephen Ross of offering him 6-figure checks to lose games intentionally, right? Then they fired him. And Flores effectively accused Stephen Ross of firing him for not being willing to tank games. And so he came at the Dolphins with a lawsuit. And because he was going up against an NFL franchise and the NFL with a lawsuit, he got picked up on a Mike Tomlin's coaching staff, but Brian Flores was considered a front runner for some head coaching jobs until that lawsuit came out, and then he basically got relegated to an NFL assistant coaching job, right? Because there were very few teams that were going to want to make a head coach out of a guy who was suing the league. But Flores' entire lawsuit is that this Dolphins team is being run very poorly. This Dolphins team is being run in a way that is dangerous and irresponsible. Let me read you a tweet. He put it out in public, so I'm going to assume that he's okay with it. My buddy Andrew, who lives here in the Ville, big Dolphins fan, put this up on Twitter last night. First off, he retweeted the Miami Dolphins tweet that said, Tua Tagovailoa has been taken to a local hospital for further evaluation. He is conscious and has movement in all his extremities. And Andrew put up on Twitter, thank God you deserve so much better than this, Tua. Scary scene. I hope you're okay. And then, less than an hour later, the biggest Miami Dolphins fan that I know put up a tweet that says, hashtag Ross out. This situation with Tua starts at the top. We've been winning in spite of him. The Miami Dolphins lost picks because of his shady business already. Now his star player could never play again. It's unacceptable. Make him sell now. End quote. That is, again, the biggest Dolphins guy that I know. And he is out here hitting up live public tweets with, you've got to get rid of the top of the food chain in Miami because this crap can't happen. And I agree. Listen, I don't call for changes in ownership because I don't like a guy. That's the owner, right? I don't call for changes in ownership because a team's bad. I call for changes in ownership because the owner is a detriment to the team, to the league, and to society as a whole. And Stephen Ross is definitely a detriment to the Dolphins and definitely a detriment to the National Football League, right? Dan Snyder is another owner that I would like on. He is a detriment to all three, the Commanders, the league, and society. Now, Stephen Ross is a real estate developer who, Liberob the woke warrior, has some societal impacts as a billionaire that I think make him a bad dude. But that's got nothing to do with football. But those same business practices he's brought into the Dolphins organization. And while he's built a team that is, up until last night, very clearly capable of competing in the AFC, now you see how and why, right? It's a bad look. And even Dolphins fans are out here like, yeah, no, this ain't gonna work for me. It's not good. It was just a bad look. It's just a bad look. Him coming back in that Buffalo game was a bad look. Him coming out in this game was a bad look. Him getting knocked out in that game made that bad look even worse, man. So, I don't know. It was bad. It was just bad. Want your thoughts? 844-FAN phone. 844-326-3663. 844-FAN phone is the number. You can tweet us at The Rob Brown Show, or tweet us all at The Fan Upstate. Hit us up on Facebook at The Fan Upstate on Facebook, and on YouTube at The Rob Brown Show, or Twitch at The Rob Brown Show. Go behind the scenes and watch the stream live. I would love to hear what it is that you guys have to say about this, because social media was a buzz, and rightfully so last night. The NFLPA, by the way, is investigating what happened in that Buffalo game to find out, what type of protocols did Tua Tagovailoa clear, right? What kind of protocols did Tua clear? We played that clip for you from Emmanuel Acho, who said, look, they gave me a concussion test. And the concussion test effectively was, what day is it? He said, obviously I knew it was Sunday because I'm in the middle of a game. And who's the president? He said at that point, the president had been the president 3 years, right? Most toddlers could have told you who the president was at that point. That's not good enough. Now, I'm not saying that is the test that was given to Tua Tagovailoa. The point is, even post CTE and concussion protocols becoming a big thing in the NFL, unless Emmanuel Acho is lying, and I've met Emmanuel Acho, he's a good dude. I don't think he's a liar. I could be wrong. I don't know him personally. I can't call him up. But I've met him in person and had a conversation with him, and he seemed like a pretty straight-up dude. He's one of my favorite analysts going right now because he's not a hot take artist. And Acho, unless he's lying, which I don't have any reason to believe that he is, just said, even after CTE and concussion protocols got kicked into the National Football League, a concussion protocol test that he got was, what day is it and who's the president? It's Sunday and Donald Trump. Oh, it's good to go. Get it back in there. Let me pull one more clip. Give me clip 3G, if you don't mind here, T2. Give me clip 3G. This is live audio from the sideline after the Tua injury at Buffalo.
Doesn't look good, Coach. Can he play?
He's in a coma.
Answer my question. Can he play?
I don't even think he can breathe. We got to get him to a hospital immediately.
You listen to me right now. I don't care what you have to do.
Tua Tagovailoa.
Stays in the game.
Gosh darn it. So there you go. Live audio from the Miami Dolphins sideline after the Tua back injury against the Buffalo Bills. I feel like,
just rub some dirt on it. You'll be okay.
Did you like that? Did you like that dramatic acting, by the way?
Yeah, it was pretty good.
I think there's got to be an Emmy coming out of that, right?
Yeah.
Got to be an Emmy coming out of that. All right. Let's take a break. We'll come back. We'll wrap up hour number 1. James in the Facebook chat says Cam was the poster child for headshots for a while. Back in 2016 when the Broncos kept hitting him dirty, the refs just let it happen. Yeah, there was a lot of complaints about it back then. And I think that was a big chunk of the discussion moving forward with the National Football League. All right, we got a bunch of stuff to get into. Joseph Vasquez just popped into the chat. He's got a long tweet. We'll come at that. Trey's got some thoughts. Skrilla's got some thoughts. We're going to hit them all. Phone lines open, 844-FAN phone, 844-326-3663. Preferred Home Services text lines there as well at 71307. Hit us up. Let me know what you think about this Tua Tagovailoa story. We got more stuff to get into coming up around the corner on the Rob Brown Show and the Fan Upstate. Let's see. Where's the start to that? Captain America Chris Evans down the hall asked if we remembered the commercial where there was a I guess a Snickers commercial. Oh, there it is. Trey started it off. He said, "Remember the Snickers commercial where they do a concussion protocol and ask the player, 'Do you know your name?' The guy laying on the ground says, 'I'm Batman.' That's good enough for Miami." Captain America Chris Evans down the hall popped into the chat said, "I remember several years ago when WORD was carrying a Panthers game back before they moved to Classic Rock. Cam got his bell rung, and the color commentator said he thinks he's Batman right now. I've never laughed harder at a football game." And listen, that's part of the evolution of this discussion, right? Is that for a while, this is something we made jokes about, right? Like, for a while, this is something we made jokes about. And I remember when the Junior Seau story came out, right? Junior Seau was one of the most well-known and well-loved NFL players of all time. Well, back in 2012, at just 43 years of age, Junior Seau committed suicide. Right? Shot himself, killed himself. And the National Institute of Health did an autopsy and concluded that Seau had chronic traumatic encephalopathy, which is CTE, which is a brain disease that has been found in other former NFL players that is believed to be caused by repetitive head trauma and can lead to conditions such as dementia, rage, and depression, according to the NIH. And they basically attributed his suicide to the long-term results of CTE. And then all of the sudden, the jokes stopped, right? They're not going to run a commercial now with a player saying, I'm Batman when asked what his name is, because you got NFL players who have offed themselves over this. Aaron Hernandez. Remember the Aaron Hernandez scandal, the Florida Gator tight end turned New England Patriot, who, now granted, Aaron Hernandez wasn't a great dude as it was, but Aaron Hernandez killed himself in prison. They did an autopsy on him and found that he had CTE. And there were very fair questions about Aaron Hernandez and what impact as a long-term football player CTE would have had on his life, right? Did CTE have something to do potentially with Aaron Hernandez's decision-making that led him to be such a bad guy and ultimately, now, also Aaron Hernandez was in prison for the rest of his life, so Wasn't exactly like he had a ton to look forward to, but they still asked the question, did that have to do with the decision-making process that led to him ending up in prison and therefore taking his own life? And I think it's fair. I think it's fair. So that's just it's just an ugly story. Texter said quality editing on that soundbite. Yeah, I know that's the kind of stuff that is going to win me awards the rest of my career, man. Honest, let's be real, you couldn't even tell that clip was edited. That's how good it was. The voice acting, spectacular.
What'd you put on it?
What's that?
What'd you put on it?
Nothing. That was a clip straight from the movie called Not Another Teen Movie.
Oh, okay.
Which was a ripoff of every American Pie style coming of age teen movie of the late 90s and early 2000s.
The good old days.
And that movie, that part of that movie was making fun of Varsity Blues. And there was a player named Reggie Ray, who was an offensive lineman, and the joke was that Reggie Ray suffered a concussion like every play, and the scoreboard was counting down the number of concussions Reggie Ray had left until he would die. And that's where that clip came from. And it turned out to be much more fortuitous than we would have liked at this point, I think.
Okay, we need a bed to turn on. I already picked some of these. All right, let's go to this page. Fuel cell. I gotta, before you leave today, I want to show you something on the analytics.
Okay. All right, we're not going to spend the whole show on the Tua Tagovailoa discussion, but is there anybody who doesn't think that this is worth some talk? Is there anybody who doesn't think it is worth some level of discussion? It's got to be, right? Like, it's got to be. It's an absolutely massive story. It's an absolutely massive story that has to be discussed. It has to be talked about. So, that being said, like I said, your thoughts are welcome the rest of the way. We got an interesting discussion going on in the stream right now. Again, available on our Facebook page or on YouTube or Twitch by searching and subscribing to the Rob Brown Show. Where did it go? Trey brought up the Snickers commercial from a few years back where they do a concussion protocol test and they ask the player, do you know your name? And the guy laying on the ground says, I'm Batman. Trey said that test was obviously good enough for Miami. Captain America Chris Evans down the hall is in the chat with us. He said, I remember several years ago when WORD was carrying a Panthers game back before they moved to WROQ, Cam got his bell rung and the color commentator said he thinks he's Batman right now. And listen, this was the point that I made in the stream. And this is why you should go to the stream, because we continue these discussions off air more in depth. This used to be something that we joked about, right? Like I just played you the clip a second ago, which if you don't know is from a movie called Not Another Teen Movie. It was a movie from, I don't know, a decade and a half, 2 decades ago that kind of made fun of all of the American Pie era coming of age teen movies of the late 90s and early 2000s. And they obviously were doing a parody on Dadgummit, now I just forgot the name of the football. Varsity Blues. They were doing a parody on Varsity Blues. It's something that we used to make jokes about, right? It's something we used to make jokes about. Watch what happened last night. It's not funny. It's not funny. It's terrifying. It's terrifying. And Tua Tagovailoa, had he sat out a couple of games and given his body and his brain time to rest and recoup, maybe he comes back. Maybe he's okay. Now, it has been proven over and over that getting one concussion exponentially increases the possibility that you will get more concussions down the line, right?
Right. That's even in boxing. Like,
oh, yeah.
They worry about that in boxing and stuff.
Once you get your first concussion, getting concussions becomes easier down the line.
And it becomes more life-threatening.
Yeah. Once you get the first one, they're going to start keeping an eye on you because getting the second one is now much easier moving down the line.
Yeah, it just loosens everything up there.
Yeah. So I mean, that's it. So it creates this situation. It creates this situation where Tua Tagovailoa is now eligible to get further. And by the way, we're watching the clip of Tua coming up. You saw it as well as I, T2. He comes up and he like shakes his head like he's trying to shake the cobwebs out while the bell's getting rung. And the Dolphins go, oh, it was a back injury. No, bleep that, dude. He came up shaking his head. That you don't shake your head and open your eyes because your back hurts. My back hurts every day. I'm 38.
He was a little wobbly too. Like you could tell, like, you know, this is a professional.
Seen that that's a head injury, right?
Yeah, and also not to mention this is a professional athlete.
Yeah,
you know, do they get up after a small I just saw it. It looked like a small hit, and he just kind of, but you could tell like he banged the back of his head.
100%.
And you know, a professional athlete that gets up. Who's at the peak of his physical strength and he's wobbling around like that, yeah, he's got a concussion.
Yeah, like I said, it wasn't a question mark on that sentence. It was a period. Tua has a concussion was not a question. It was a statement. It was obvious then. I'm not a doctor of brain stuff, but Chris Nowitzki is, and he popped in. And for the record, and Trey cleaned up for me here, Chris Nowitzki had a promising wrestling career that was ended because of concussions. He had a Harvard degree before that. He went on to get his PhD in brain doctor stuff, smart brain guy doctor stuff, and he has now become one of the leading voices in concussion research and advancement to try to limit this to the best of our ability. Look, football's a dangerous game. The people who watch it know it. We know that every time the football is snapped, we know that we might watch a gruesome career-ending injury. Mm-hmm. And every time that these guys line up and take a snap, they know that their ass and body is on the line. We know that. And
that's what makes it good.
There is some level of risk acceptance that everybody involved in football has. But to say that we should not do our best to limit that is insanity. And to say that stuff like the Dolphins letting Tua trot back out there against Buffalo when he very clearly had his bell rung in a way that impacted him greatly, and then to run him out last night against Cincinnati when he very clearly did not have time to get over that bell ringing is bad and dangerous.
Very dangerous.
So there's just some thoughts on that. I like I said, I didn't intend to spend a whole hour on this. I really didn't. But at the same time, it aggravated me. It made me very angry. It really did. Texter says, fan, another incident where, let's see, let me go back to, that's from yesterday. Yeah, so Texter said, fan, the Tua injury was bad right away. Very glad the reports are saying he seems to be okay. But why did Amazon keep showing the replay? One time was enough. You know, I get that, Texter. I understand that. And I get not wanting to look at it because it was disturbing. He said there's no need to keep showing it over and over. I get that it was disturbing to watch. I watched it in the press box at the Burns-Spartanburg game last night when the game was over. And I know it was disturbing, and I know it was gut-wrenching to watch, but here's why I'm glad they did. Because if you see that, if you watched him writhing on the ground, the fencer's reflex, unable to control his fingers and very clearly in distress and calling out for his head coach because he knew something was wrong. If you watch that and you see it 2 or 3 or 4 times and you don't think we need to do better, we need to make this kind of stuff, we need to do everything we can to limit it, I don't know what to say to you. Hour number 2's around the corner of the Rob Brown Show in the Fan Upstate.
Okay. Yeah, dude, I've seen a lot of bar fights and stuff, and I've seen somebody get hit so hard that their legs and their hands kind of like curl up, like you were just talking about. It is it's very scary.
I'll tell you what, and I've told people this before. I've never been in a fight. I got no interest in being in a fight. Part of the reason that I don't have any interest being in a fight is because I know that's a potential impact, right? You take the right punch to the noggin, or there's a guy in Pensacola who, a Navy guy, who got into a fist fight outside of a bar. A guy came up and was harassing his girlfriend. They got into a fist fight. He punched the dude, knocked him over. The dude fell backwards, and he hit the back of his head on a parking bumper. You know what I'm talking about? Like in the front of the parking space, like one of those raised concrete barriers. Hit the back of his head on that and died. They charged the guy with manslaughter.
Yeah.
He's in prison for like 24 years.
Yeah.
Because of that.
That's why it's very important if you do fight, you have to do it in self-defense, not,
Even still, like I said, the guy was harassing his wife, and he went after him, and he's in jail for manslaughter now.
Right.
Captain America says, T2, why have you seen a lot of bar fights? Because some of us are degenerates, Christopher.
Yeah.
Some of us like bars. Lonzo's in a cold sweat somewhere.
The reason I've seen a lot of bar fights is because I was DJ for 12 years in the Spartanburg area. So, not to say that everywhere in Spartanburg is, a lot of fights, but there are a few places. I've seen that happen a couple times where somebody's gotten hit so hard their feet are going up in the air, and it's creepy. It's
yeah.
I'm sitting there like trying to like help the person, and everybody else is like watching the fight. That used to drive me nuts. All around. Like I DJ'd at Wild Wing Cafe. This was back in like the 2007 to 2010 era. Wild Wings, Chiefs. Let's see. I did a lot of Chiefs and Wild Wings, and then there was a few bars. I did Tracy's Place for a little while. That's off 101. Let's see. Rockwater Tavern. I'm not sure if it's still Rockwater Tavern or not. Did that sometimes. I did Crocs over here in Greenville. I've done it in Spartanburg when it was Crocs. A lot of places. Did a lot of private events too. That was the bread and butter. That was a good payday, and then the bars I used to just kind of hold me over. It was one time, man. I was making good money, just DJing. I did bars during the week, and then weddings and private stuff on weekends. It was nice.
I worked as a bartender / DJ at a resort in Destin, and I have never made more money. A 50-10 win for the Gamecocks last night. They're now 3-2 on the season after they put away the outmatched South Carolina State Bulldogs. Gave up 75 yards through the air, 145 on the ground. Tyrese Nick, the QB for South Carolina State, one of the more impressive rushing quarterbacks that I have seen at lower level football in a while. Spencer Rattler was 21 of 27, 212, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks, but both of those picks came off of the hands of Xavier Legette, who basically just had a night to forget, man. Just a night to forget, unfortunately for him. Would have had a big gain because on the opening drive, Xavier Legette, who ended the night with 1 catch for 7 yards, he dropped 2 catchable passes. The first on the first drive of the game, Rattler launched a deep shot into SC State territory. Legette had his hands on the ball going to the ground. He kind of rolled over on the ball, and the ball came out of his hands. It popped up into the air, and SC State was able to grab it. Then in the second quarter, Legette got hit in the hands again, couldn't hold on to a pass. It was intercepted at the SC State 2-yard line. So, you know, as far as I'm concerned, I have talked about my favorite stat that nobody keeps, which is the NHF, the not his fault, right? Spencer Rattler was 21 of 27 for 212, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, and 2 NHFs. 2 not his faults. He rightfully should have been probably at least 23 of 27 for about 275 and maybe 3 touchdowns. Instead, Legette has 2 pop off his hands. Bad night for him. Not a bad night for Marshawn Lloyd. Again, another night, 11 carries, 80 yards, 1 touchdown, an average of 7.3 yards per tote. Rattler also carried the rock, 5 for 31. Dante Miller, 2 carries for 29. Through the air, Jalen Brooks, 3 grabs for 61. Jaheim Bell, 2 for 48. Wells Jr., 7 for 38. Stogner, 1 for 15, and that was a touchdown from Rattler. Beal Smith, 2 for 13. Marshawn, 3 for 11 with a touch. Amarion Brown, 1 for 11. Juju had 2 for 8. Xavier had 1 for 7. Van had 1 for 5, and Nate Atkins had 1 for 2. That is, and I'm bad at counting, but a lot of guys who caught the football. Van also had a fumble that was lost on the play. Rattler and Marshawn both fumbled once. Neither of those ended up being turnovers. However, listen, it was far from perfection. It was far from perfection for the Gamecocks last night. But what did I say I wanted them to do? Cover the spread. Right? To me last night, the Gamecocks were not just playing SC State. The Gamecocks were playing the spread. They were playing the spread. Their job last night was to cover the spread, and they did. They covered it well, too. What was it, 29 and a half, I think? And they covered it up big time, winning by 40. OU in that game set at 55 and a half. South Carolina almost got to the over-under by themselves, right? Legette doesn't drop one of those 2 passes, maybe both of those 2 passes. They cover the over-under by themselves. That's good showing. That's a really good showing from the Gamecocks. But in their back-to-back big-time wins, in their back-to-back wins over Charlotte last week, 56-20, and putting the half-century mark up again last night against SC State, let's call a spade a spade. They were playing inferior football teams. Now, the question mark is, can you take that ability to run the ball with Marshawn Lloyd, with Spencer Rattler, with Dante Miller? Can you take that ability to run the ball, and can you do it against Kentucky? Can you do it against a much better football team? And can you do it on the road? But that wasn't the only thumbs up. The good news for South Carolina in that game, they were able to put points on the board early. They scored on their second drive, went for and converted the 2-point conversion. They had the swinging gate style PAT. After the touchdown, they recognized that they had the man v man advantage at the site of the football on the snap. They direct snapped it and right up the gut for the easy 2-point conversion. It was 8-0 in the first quarter. They would not find the end zone to get in the first, but one of the issues for South Carolina so far this season is getting off to a strong start offensively. In the first 4 games of the season, the Gamecocks had not scored a first quarter touchdown. It didn't hurt them against Georgia State and Charlotte, but it put them behind the 8 ball in the 2 SEC contests. Now, I don't look at the Georgia game and think we can actually get an accurate picture of what South Carolina is. Georgia is the best football team in America. And I don't know that it's particularly close right now, to be honest. But you go back to the other South Carolina SEC game. You go back to the Arkansas game. 44-30, your final in that one. South Carolina did put up 3 in the first quarter, but they allowed Arkansas to get the early jump, which meant at that point, no matter what you want to say, even if it is early, you still kind of got to change the way that you approach and attack that football game. It gets you out of rhythm. It kind of takes you out of the game plan that you had scheduled to run through right there. Last night, that wasn't the case. Last night, they put up the early touchdown. They were playing from ahead at that point after the screen pass to Marshawn. They were able to keep doing what they wanted to do, and it showed. Marshawn Lloyd came up big as well. 8 touchdowns on the ground so far, 6 on the ground, 2 of them through the air. Had a career performance against Charlotte last week. Charlotte's defense, though, giving up 500 yards a game. He came back, and he did it again last night with a pair of touchdowns. Was USC's leading rusher, 80 yards on 11 attempts, as we mentioned. The running game was not good earlier in the season, but they got a little momentum now. That's exactly what you want out of these 2 games. This is why most, not all, but this is why most teams schedule 1, sometimes 2 FBS teams or FCS teams, FBS teams out of the gate. This is why most teams have those 2 lower level games right out of the gate, so that you can find what SC found in the games against Charlotte and SC State last night. And then there was Spencer Rattler. Look, he was crisp last night. Did he light the world on fire? No. The 2 picks were NHFs, not his fault. Neither one of them should be on the books for him. He showed accuracy last night. He showed playmaking ability last night. The 54-yard pass to Jalen Brooks that set up the touchdown drive was absolutely an illustration that he can hit the deep ball. He had the 15-yard touchdown pass to Austin Stogner. In that one, there was pressure off the edges, and Rattler stepped up in to the pocket, trusted his offensive linemen to hold their blocks and give him the time he needed to read that little seam route. He did. He got it to Stogner. Stogner scored 21 of 27 and 2 touchdowns. Realistically should have been 23 of 27 and probably better, because the 1 lost fumble from Van and the 2 drop balls turn picks, the 2 NHFs from Xavier Legette, probably took more opportunities off the board that South Carolina could have driven and scored on. Spencer Rattler's numbers were not as good as Spencer Rattler was last night. It just weren't. Luke Doty came into that game late in the game to give a spell to Spencer Rattler. He went 3 of 3 for 7 yards, multiple just little quick hits there to get out. The team 24 of 30 for 219, 2 touchdowns and 2 NHFs throughout the course of the game. Again, was it perfect? No. No, there were some things South Carolina could have done better. Was it better than the Arkansas game? Heck yeah, it was. And listen, you can go out and be practice warriors, right? You can go out and practice and you can have it all down when it's up against the twos on defense, running half speed and not really hitting you all that much, right? What I need you to do is put it into effect on game day. What I need you to do is put it into effect on game day. I need you to go out and show me that you can execute against defensive ones. I need you to go out that you can do defensive ones in full speed and give me a run. And I thought last night they did. It wasn't perfect. There's still stuff to be cleaned up. But for a team that we expected 6-6, would have liked 7-5, and 8-4 was a distant possibility, putting up 50 in back-to-back games against lower-level teams is what you have to do. Now you look ahead to the rest of the schedule for this 3-3 team, or 3-2 team, and I got to find 3 more wins. You got to go to Kentucky, the number 7 team in the country. That's a good team. Playing them at 7:30. But you got an extra 3 days to prepare. Could an upset be brewing? Probably not. You got to go down to Aggieville and take on the Colt, Texas A&M. Is that a win? Probably not. Then you got your best 3 cracks at it after that, back to back to back. October 29th against Missouri. November 5th at Vanderbilt. November 12th at Florida. Florida just gave Tennessee a fit last weekend. All right. I know that the couple of games that we have talked about with Florida that showed that the 2-2 Gators are not back yet. The L to Kentucky, the L to Tennessee, the scare against South Florida. It's still not a bad football team by any stretch of the imagination. That's a tough out at Florida. Unless Florida has a couple of L's between here and there, right? And between here and South Carolina, they've got Eastern Washington, Mizzou, LSU, at Georgia, and at A&M. If the Gamecocks are lucky, if they're lucky, 3 out of those 4 are going to be L's for the Gators, right? LSU, Georgia, A&M, maybe Mizzou can surprise them. That one is at home in the Swamp, though. But if they can drop 3 in a row to LSU, Georgia, and A&M, maybe the Swamp is not quite as intimidating on November 12th as it would be if Florida wins all 5 between here and there. So that's a maybe game at Florida. Then you're back home against a top 10 team in Tennessee, and then you're on the road at a top 5 team in Clemson, and you know Death Valley is going to be absolutely rocking that night. So I need 3 between Kentucky, A&M, Mizzou, Vandy, Florida, Tennessee, and Clemson. I'm going to tell you, it's going to be a tough push. It's going to be a tough push. Texter says, Rob, I just want to say the first quarter for the Gamecocks was terrible, and if a questionable block in the back, which was a shoulder, would have been a. All right, let me try this again. So here's what happens when you send me a long text. It gets split up into multiple lines, and it doesn't always come through in the order that it should. So let me give that another run, shall we? Rob, I just want to say the first quarter for the Gamecocks was terrible. And if a questionable block in the back, which was a which was a shoulder-to-shoulder, doesn't bring a touchdown back for SC State, this might have been a different ball game because then the Gamecocks are playing from behind. Yeah, I saw that block. They called it a blindside illegal block because it was behind the ball carrier. I think that was a flag that was brought out more because of the violence of the hit than what the hit was, right? I think if the SC State player kind of puts his arm out in front of the Gamecock defender and kind of screens him out, that flag probably doesn't stand. And SC State is deep in Gamecock territory. I still think the Bulldogs were outmatched, right? I still think the Bulldogs were outmatched. I don't think that they were going to win that game. I think they just didn't have the firepower. That's a 1-3 South Carolina State football team that's lost to UCF, North Carolina A&T. Their only win is against Bethune-Cookman. They were still outclassed and outmatched in that game. Would it have been a different game? Maybe. Like I said, it was far from perfect for the Gamecocks, right? I'm not looking at 50 points and going, okay, this team's taking a step yet. I want to see him against Kentucky have this type of performance, right? I want to see him bring the running game against Kentucky. Now, again, we can talk about, Texter, that shoulder-to-shoulder block that got brought back as an illegal blindside block. But I would also make the argument that Leggett doesn't have an NHF INT on the field. South Carolina probably scores on that opening drive, right? Ifs and buts were candy and nuts, we'd all have a Merry Christmas, or however that dumbass saying goes. We'd have a different feel today. But that's football. That's football. Let's take a break. We'll come back here in just a minute. We got to start looking ahead to the college and NFL weekend. I'll give you some of the matchups that I am most excited about. No Boo Box bets pits this week because Lonzo is out. We will return to the Boo Box. We're taking a 1-week break. Had a push last week, but I will give you some of my favorite bets against the spread coming up later on in the show. Then we'll take a look down the NFL schedule. Also want to talk some baseball because the Braves and Mets got a 3-gamer in Atlanta, and I believe that if the Bravos want to go into the playoffs as a 2 seed, they have got to sweep this series against the Mets. Talk about that next on the Rob Brown Show on the Fan Upstate.
Steven, Cool World was a little before my time, but I do remember people talking about it, and I do know where it was.
Oh, cool. The Saints are missing like all the players this weekend. We are about to get roasted by Minnesota. Huzzah. Can't wait. Cannot wait.
Save hour 1 here. File, save as. Rob Brown of the Rob Brown Show. All right. That is hour 1. Today's what? Today 1st. It's the
30th.
30th, okay. I suppose I could have looked at the thing, but you were right there first. Trey, yes. Yes, it is that place, yes.
They called it Cool World?
Yeah, it was Cool World.
Cool World. Was it like an ice-themed bar? Or was it literally just like, we're cool?
Oh, no, it was, if memory serves, I think it started out as like a teen bar. Now, I'd never been there, and this was before my time, so correct me if I'm wrong, comments. But, yeah, so like I thought it was like originally started out as a teen bar, and then it became a regular bar. And yeah, they went through like a bunch of different owners and stuff, so they changed names quite a few times. Is this done? Yeah. Oh, thanks for the props you gave me in that email. I really appreciate that. You did a show from the Hooters in Crestview? I don't even know where that is.
Years ago.
I've done the Hooters in Spartanburg a few times. When it was Hooters. It's not there anymore.
I had a show years ago that was title sponsor. It was the Hooters Sports Show with Rob Brown. And so 5 nights a week, I did remotes from Hooters.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. So I had to drive. But the problem was, it was every Hooters between Mobile, Alabama, and Panama City Beach, Florida. So, like, it was an hour and 15 minutes in either direction. So every day I had to drive like an hour and 15 minutes to a Hooters to do a show. Not a complaint. My job was to literally work at a Hooters. Like, life's been worse.
I enjoyed working at Hooters, yeah.
Plus a talent fee every single day. Did not hurt my feelings at all.
Yeah, I think we did their bike night. They were doing a bike night for a little while. It was maybe 2008. I don't know, somewhere back then. All that time just kind of blurs together for me. Yep, down the road from Westgate Mall. That's right, Trey. Yep, and it was a Hardee's. You are absolutely right, I think. Oh, we still got some time on this. You can control what they pull up from the post by including social media meta tags. Yes, the meta tags do work. Oh. All right, let's try this. What is a meta tag?
All right, the Rob Brown Show rolls on. This is the Fan Upstate, Rob. T2, the Timinator, filling in for the great one, Lonzo. He'll be back from vacation coming up on Monday morning. Let's talk Clemson NC State for just a minute, because this is a massive game. This is a massive game for these two teams. And I want to take a look at it from the NC State perspective, right? You bring a Devin Leary back. Devin Leary went 238 and 4 touchdowns last year against Clemson in that win at home. Now he's got to come down to Clemson, a place where NC State, I believe their last win was 2002 at Clemson, if I recall correctly, which would have made me a freaking junior in high school. And yesterday I got the email to start planning for next year's 20-year reunion. Just to put that into perspective for you. I believe that is correct.
You were a junior in 2002?
I was.
We are around the same age. That's crazy.
let me say this real quick. I was on Reddit yesterday, and there was a post about House of the Dragon, the Game of Thrones prequel that is running on HBO, which I'm in love with right now. And
don't spoil it, because I haven't. I think I'm a week or two behind.
Get caught up. It's great. There was a post about the young lady who plays the younger version of Allison Hightower, who is one of the primary protagonists in this. And the guy's like, Allison Hightower, born in 2003. Yo, I graduated high school in 2003.
Oh, you were 2003? I graduated 07.
I graduated high school the year that this young woman, who is now winning Emmys for an amazing performance in a phenomenal show playing the Queen of a Land, was born while I was graduating high school. And I immediately felt the arthritis in my knees start acting up. That's how bad it was. Anyway, Devin Leary, 238, 4 touchdowns last year against Clemson. They got the dub at home, but they have not won at Clemson in like a long time. Here's something that I want to keep an eye on. And it is the fact that Devin Leary hasn't really been good against anybody good so far this year, right? They opened up against East Carolina. A Wolfpack win, but a Wolfpack win where Leary went 17 of 33 for 211, a touch and a pick. So around a 50% completion percentage against ECU. They almost lost that football game. He did have a better day against Charleston Southern. 16 of 25, 238, and 4 touchdowns. But again, all due respect to the Buccaneers, it's Charleston Southern. They went up against Texas Tech. In that game, Devin Leary went 15 of 23 for 121, no touchdowns, no interceptions. Best team they played so far are the 2-1 Red Raiders. And Leary wasn't a non-factor, but he wasn't really a factor either. Then last week, NC State got a 41-10 win over a 1-4 UConn team. And once again, against the bad team, Leary had a good day. Devin Leary went 32 of 44, 324 touchdowns, and 1 interception in that game. Devin Leary has not done anything against good teams. The games against UConn and Charleston Southern were glorified passing practice for him. All right? Just was. Against Texas Tech, I don't think he had a ball over 12 yards get completed. Everything was dink and dunk. Everything was short range. Clemson is easily the best defense that Devin Leary has faced since Clemson last year. And Clemson last year was the worst Clemson that we have seen so far. It took them overtime in that game to win. It took them overtime for Devin Leary to go 32 of 44 for 328, 4 touchdowns, no picks. DJ Uiagalelei in that game, 12 of 26, 111, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. It was an awful game. Awful game for the Tigers all around. 111 through the air, 103 on the ground, but 63 of those came from DJU, right? It was arguably the worst Clemson game against a conference opponent, maybe, under Dabo Swinney's entire watch at this point, right? This year, Clemson brings out an NFL quality defensive front. But more importantly for the Tigers, the offense seems to have started putting it together. Devin Leary is not as good as Sam Hartman, okay? He's just not. The defensive front for Clemson, though, has given up a lot. Louisiana Tech went for 300 yards. Sam Hartman, Wake Forest, 337, 6 touchdowns through the air. It's not been good. The offense has bailed the defense out the last couple of games for Clemson. We talked about that on Monday. The weak spot is the defense. Now, the bad news is that Devin Leary has already got your defense once last year, but that was at NC State. Now they come home, friendly confines. Clemson fans, I got no doubt, tomorrow night are going to be fired up. Remember, you've got college game day on campus, which means tailgating is going to be open all day. As soon as the rain blows through, I suspect that the most uphill campus in America is going to be freaking rocky, which means that Death Valley is going to be freaking rocky tomorrow. Devin Leary has not had a good game against a good defense. So the question mark in this game is, can Clemson's defense show up? Can Clemson's defense finally be there for the offense? The Wolfpack defense has been good. 4 takeaways in their 27-14 win over Texas Tech. The secondary has 7 picks on the year. Their defense is good enough. Good enough. I don't think Clemson's getting to 45 in this game. I could be wrong. I hope I am. I don't think Clemson's getting to 45. You want to win this game? You want to win this game, you are going to have to prevent Leary from having a Hartman day. It's that simple. If the Clemson, it really comes down to this for me. And you guys know, I don't like to make football simple. There's 1,000 things at every position that could go right or wrong every single week that push a game towards a dub or an L for both teams. This one is very simple for me. If the offense does what they've done the last 2 weeks, DJ Uiagalelei is, you ever seen when people, T2, you ever seen when they do the thing where they like crank up their hand and then they slowly raise the middle finger up when they're driving in their car or whatever?
Yeah.
DJU is in the cranking portion of that hand gesture right now, right? Like he's doing the crank and the bird's about halfway up. Right?
Yeah.
This game is his opportunity to go boop and flip the rest of the bird to everybody who beat the hell out of him during the offseason, right? This is his game. This is his opportunity to do just that. 64% completion percentage. He crossed the 1,000-yard mark on the season last week, 1,033 yards. He's got 10 touchdowns, just 1 pick, also a $169 and a touchdown on the ground as well. This is DJU's time for a little bit of redemption. Leary was great last year. The NC State defense was great last year, and Clemson still almost won the game, even with DJ having an abysmal day. If DJ's consistent, right? I didn't even know that he has to do everything he did against Wake Forest last week. Just be consistent. Then this game 100% comes down to the defensive side of the ball for the Tigers. Leary has not been good against average defenses. Create pressure. Do not let them establish the line of scrimmage. Blow up pass pro. Defensive ends. Maintain, contain. Do not let him cross the face of the tackle and make plays to the outside. You do that, you win the game. You don't do that, you lose the game. It's just that simple. We are talking about the weather. It should be cleared up and fine by then. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk to Chris Lewis. He is the president of the Greenville Triumph, as the Triumph will play their match tomorrow evening. Weather be darned. We'll talk to Chris Lewis next on the Rob Brown Show and the Fan Upstate. Right back, stream. Got to get Chris on the phone. Don't go nowhere. All right, we're back.
lost on the sign. That was a commercial. Y'all can't hear it.
The Rob Brown Show rolls on. This is the Fan Upstate. Looks like we are going to be very, very fortunate with the weather forecast here in the Upstate. As of right now, we are going to get some rain today. All right, we've got upwards of 90% chance of rain through the day. We are going to get some rain in the area today, but tomorrow looks good. We thought that there was going to be a chance that we were going to get some ugly weather throughout the area tomorrow, but as of right now, it is going to be overcast. It is going to be cloudy tomorrow, but it does appear that the chance of rain, especially in the evening, is going to be down around the 20% mark. It may not rain tomorrow. We were kind of worried about the conditions for Clemson, NC State. We were worried about the conditions for Furman, Sanford tomorrow at Paladin Stadium. And we were worried about rain tomorrow night when the Greenville Triumph welcomed Tucson back into Legacy Early College. That is a big game because the Greenville Triumph are currently second on the USL League One table. They are 5 points behind Richmond, but you are still looking at a situation where the Greenville Triumph could end up getting back to the top of the table. Now it's going to be a fight to do so. It's going to be a fight to do so, and I'm working on getting Chris in the stream. Don't hang up on him yet, T2. We're going to try to get him in on the stream to participate in this show. I know we're calling audibles here, man. Omaha! The Triumph right now are currently sitting second on the USL League One table, okay? Richmond is ahead of us by 5 points. They have won 3 out of their last 5 with 2 draws to go along with it. The Triumph do not have a win in their last 5. They've got 3 draws and a pair of ties. But they've got standing between them and the end of the season. They have got a home match against Tucson this Saturday, tomorrow at 7 p.m. They've got the final regular season home match coming up on October 8th, next Saturday, against Charlotte Independence. And then they've got a final game on the road at Richmond. If you can get 9 points out of that, that would also mean that you've got a chance. You'll need a little help. You'll need Richmond to drop a couple, but there is the possibility. I've got Chris in the stream, so if you don't mind making sure that he's potted up, we welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, the president of the Greenville Triumph, Mr. Chris Lewis, joins us live on the stream. It's technology, Chris Lewis.
Holy smokes.
Look at us. We're going big time over here. How we doing, young man?
I'm good. And given this, I'm glad that I dressed appropriately today.
You did. By the way, the light blue is a heck of a look, man. Is that available in the Triumph Team store? Because I think I'd look good in baby blue.
Could be coming to a Triumph Team store near you soon.
That's all I'm looking for. Ladies and gentlemen. Chris Lewis, president of the Greenville Triumph, joining us here on the show. And Chris, let's just call a spade on this one. 3 draws and a pair of losses in the last 5 for the Triumph. The next 2 home matches, trailing Richmond by 5 points, tied points-wise with Union Omaha on the table right now. How important is it for the Triumph to do what they need to get 6 points out of the next 2 weekends at home?
It's incredibly important. And I'm likely stating the obvious here, but with 3 matches left, I think we have to look to grab 9 points in order to try and control our own destiny a little bit. As you said, it's jam packed. I mean, Richmond has a little bit of a cushion over us in Omaha, but from 2 down through 6, we're separated by 4 points. So dropping points isn't really something that we can look to do over these final 3 matches. Thankfully, 2 out of the 3 are at home, and it's like you said, the run of form recently. We've stumbled a little bit here. We're figuring out how to find gutsy points along the way, but now we need to finish completely and grab all 3 anytime we get a chance.
Talk to me a little bit about that, because you mentioned gutsy points. I mean, we saw a goal to go level in the last match, right at stoppage time, which was a critical save of a point there. But you mentioned the need to finish. What is the difference between the run of midseason form where we were picking up threes more than we weren't versus the last 5 games? I mean, listen, I know it's late in the season. You're at a point where you've got injuries that have piled up, stamina gets called into play, etc. What is it going to take for this team to turn the corner and make sure that we get a couple of 3-pointers out of these last 3?
I think, quite honestly, it's just staying switched on the whole game. We've had some moments where we've played 75, 80, 85 minutes of quality soccer, and then for some reason we switch off momentarily and the ball ends up in the back of the net, and it causes it makes us go from gaining 3 points to gaining 1 point. It may be a thing like we've seen of late where we're trailing. We get our the same thing. Like we switch off for a little bit. We're not executing the way we need to, and we find ourselves down. But to the guys' credit, they end up clutching and clawing and finding their way to find a goal to equalize, and we grab a point where maybe we shouldn't have. So I think now it's just about hyper focus and training. It's taking in all of the tactical and strategic information that the coaches are providing to the guys, reps in training, and just having the collective mindset ready to go to play 90 to 95 or so minutes and finish completely and grab all 3 points, because it's going to be vital. Every point, it sounds so sports cliche, but every point is going to count over these final 3 matches.
It does. And we've seen this team go on the road for finals. We saw them earn a home final, though unfortunately due to COVID that match did not get played in Greenville because we went wire to wire. We ended up with that season's championship trophy, especially if it ends up being a Richmond Kicker team, which we will see on the road one last time to wrap out the season. How much, and I know obviously the obvious answer, if I may take the title of Captain Obvious from you for just a moment, having a match at home for a championship versus away is big, but how much, when you're interacting with the players, you're interacting with Harksey, how much different is it for these guys when they are playing in front of 110, in front of the Reedy River Riot, in front of the Greenville Triumph fans at Legacy, as opposed to having to go to a hostile away environment, potentially Richmond, if we were to make it through the playoffs to a championship match once again?
It's huge. I mean, we've heard John and the players talk about it throughout the course of not only this season, but seasons past. The home field advantage, there's something to it. And especially with the way Legacy is constructed, when that place is full and people are chanting and screaming and yelling, and the guys can feel that energy out on the pitch, and it makes a difference. There's a reason why teams vie for those top 2 spots and ultimately the top spot, so that you're going to be playing on your home field throughout the playoffs. So certainly right now where we sit, we're in one of those positions. To your point, if the match is played out to where it was us and Richmond standing, right now we'd have to go up to Richmond, and our guys I think are okay with that. I think last time I was on with you, they talked about how they were kind of looking forward to the 3-game road trip because they felt like it might help them get some focus and kind of create a little bit of bunker mentality and head into these things. And I think that will kick in even more so when it's the second season, if you will, and the postseason. But there's certainly something to having your fans there, the energy you can draw off of them, staying within your own routine, sleeping in your own bed. So if we can do all of those things and set it up so that we have those competitive advantages, then we absolutely want to do that.
Chris Lewis, president of the Greenville Triumph, joining us here on the Rob Brown Show and the Fan Upstate. Let's talk a little bit about this Tucson team that we'll take on tomorrow. We have seen them twice so far this year. We went on the road back in early July, earned a 1-1 draw. We visited Tucson back in late August and brought home a 1-0 win in that one. This is a team in Tucson that is second to last in the USL League One, but they're also a team that's got a lot of fight to them. And at this point, basically playing for pride. Tucson's going to throw everything they've got at us. What's the mentality of the team getting set up to try to defend the house back-to-back in the next 2 Saturdays, getting prepped for Tucson tomorrow?
Well, and anybody who follows sports of any kind knows one of your worst nightmares heading into any game is a team that's got nothing to lose. And Tucson, we were just talking about run of form up toward the top of the table and how it's been, it's been a little rough. Tucson's won 4 of their last 5. And, that one that wasn't a W was a draw. I was just talking to one of my counterparts yesterday, and they had recently run up against Tucson. And what he said to me was they were unrelenting. They came at us again and again and again and again. And it's, Tucson, as you mentioned, they're not sitting where I think they'd like to be in the standings. But they're well coached, and they're a team that, just like you said, has a lot of fight in them. So you can look at their run of form of late. Like they're going to come at us. So we need to be ready for that. And we can't fall into the trap of, they're 10th of 11 teams. So this is going to be, let's look ahead, to Charlotte. It's, who again is another team that's won 3 in a row and is on the come up. So we've got a tall task in front of us for tomorrow night, and that's why I'm hoping that everybody takes a look at the revised weather schedule, where it's even now showing the sun may peak out around kickoff time tomorrow evening. So Greenville, don't be afraid of a little bit of rain. It's going to be a light breeze tomorrow evening. It could actually be quite pleasant, and the guys need it. We're even giving away beanies tomorrow night. So, if you feel like you're going to be cold, you'll have a beanie when you come in. You can put it on your head.
I like it. We're talking to Chris Lewis, president of the Greenville Triumph. Last one before I let you go, Chris. And obviously we talked a little bit about the fact that we've got 2 more at home, 1 on the road. And it's interesting in this spot because on one hand, the best way to try to take that spot from Richmond, not only would it would help to get a full 9, but we'd also want a little help from our biggest 2 rivals, Tormenta and Ford Madison, who both have Richmond before we square up on the road to end the season. There's this interesting dichotomy, Chris, in that on one hand, you need all 3. You want all 3 to wrap up the season, not just with 9, but on a run of momentum into the playoffs. But on the flip side, the only way to make sure you do that is to win the next one, which is Tucson. How does Harksey talk to the boys in a way that they know you got to focus on Tucson, but we've also got to make sure that we've got our best form as of late in all 3 of the next 3 to give ourselves a chance? Kind of seems like you almost got to be able to look in 2 directions there, focusing on Saturday, but making sure you understand how important this last 3 games are.
You do. And John's approach with these kind of scenarios usually is just focus on what's immediately in front of you. We can't control what's going to happen in Statesboro. The best we can hope for, to your point in terms of help, is that our friends in Statesboro and in Madison tie Richmond, so that each team only gets a point. Because Tormenta is right on our heels as well. So It's focus on what's right in front of us, focus on the task at hand here, and then take care of business, and then we move on to Charlotte, and then we move on to Richmond. But none of that matters if we don't take care of what's right in front of us.
Chris Lewis is the president of the Greenville Triumph. Again, they play at home. Legacy Early College tomorrow, 7 p.m., taking on Tucson. Next Saturday is Fan Appreciation Night. Back home against Charlotte, and then one on the road to wrap it up at number 1 on the table, Richmond. Chris, my man, appreciate you, big dog. And listen, I will be there full voice tomorrow. I'll try to bring everybody with me.
You're the best. We, like I said, Greenville and upstate community is at large. It's not going to be as bad as everybody thought. It's probably not even going to rain. The sun may peek out. We're giving away beanies, and Rob's going to be there. So
yeah, exactly.
Why
a
would
lot of reasons that might scare you away. Don't let it.
Exactly.
Appreciate you, big fella. We'll see you tomorrow at Legacy.
You're the best, pal. Thanks, man.
See you then. That is Chris Lewis, the president of the Greenville Triumph. We appreciate his time. As always, let's take a break. We'll come back with hour number 3 of the Rob Brown Show next on the Fan Upstate. All right, pardon me, stream. Be right back. Final segment, final hour of the week's always exciting. It's all football. Oh, you know what? Oh, crap. I got a guest. I'm going to
All right.
text you the number to call them up.
Yeah, text me. And their name.
Yep. Here, I'm just going to hand you the phone. Name's on there.
That's fine.
Final hour of the week, baby! Right here on the Rob Brown Show and the Fan Upstate. I'm Rob Brown, my man T2, the Timinator, Tim Snow, filling in for the great one, Lonzo, today and doing a heck of a job. I appreciate it. He has been hustling for us this week. Appreciate him. Burns football last night had a great call. Unfortunately for the Rebels, the Spartanburg Vikings are good. And I'm going to tell you folks over in the Sparkle City that stadium is redonk, dude. Listen, I've been told over and over about Dorman and how beautiful their stadium is, and I'm excited to get over there. We got Boiling Springs next Friday night, back at Burns, and then we're on the road at Dorman U. And I have heard that Dorman Stadium is most excellent, dude. I've heard it's most excellent. But I'm going to tell you right now, what I saw at Spartanburg last night was impressive as hell. I have called games at lower-level college football fields that did not have as nice of a stadium as Spartanburg did last night. I was blown away. And the Viking football team matches. That's a good team. That's a good squad. A lot of athletes over there. A lot of athletes on the Viking side of the football. Before we get into one last rundown and some money-making picks for you in college and pro ball over the weekend, I do want to talk baseball for just a couple of minutes because, ladies and gentlemen, your Atlanta Braves are kicking off this evening a 3-game home series against the New York Mets. The Metropolitans currently hold a 1-game lead over the Braves because the Braves decided to give one back to the lowly Nationals in extra innings. It allowed the Mets, with a final win over the Marlins, to take that series and take that 1-game lead back from Atlanta. And now, all of the sudden, this 3-gamer looks massive. To talk about that game, we are going to welcome in a friend of mine off the air, a friend of mine on it. He broadcasts over in Atlanta, Georgia on 92.9 The Game. He works on their morning show. He's got his own show called the Abe TL Show on Saturdays. He is Mr. Abe Gordon joining us on the show. Abe, what's up, my guy?
Rob, how you doing, brother?
I'm jacked, dude. It's Friday. We got football all weekend. We got the Bravos playing for the 2 seed, and I'm pumped, man. How about, we talk about sports for a living, Abe Gordon. Life is good.
You know, baseball sets their schedules with this being the point. This is the plan. This is the dream. You've got the Atlanta Braves, New York Mets, for the only real division battle there is in all of baseball, in the next to last series of the season, and you've got 2 of the best pitchers in baseball kicking things off. I mean, you talk about playoffs starting early before October, last day of September here, and you better be in playoff mode right now.
Got to be. I mean, listen, I know it's regular season. It's not. This is playoff baseball. And you know it's playoff baseball, Abe, because not only is it 3 games with the NL East in the balance, but you got the top of the rotation going for the Mets with DeGrom and Scherzer. You got the top of the rotation. I really wish Spencer Strider was healthy because that dude had been smoking it. But you're getting the best the Braves have to offer off the hill. Walk me through this series right now. I mean, anything less than a Brave sweep kind of puts them, unfortunately, a bit behind the 8 ball, since both we and the Mets have the last place 2 teams in the NL East as a 3-gamer to end it. But in your mind, how important is it for the Braves to at least get 2 out of 3 in this one?
2 out of 3 gives you a chance, but you do not control your destiny just winning the series. The only way the Atlanta Braves control their destiny due to the tie-breaking rules is with an actual series sweep. The Mets will hold the tiebreaker if you take 2 or 3 here. So while, yes, you would have a situation where you're tied in the standings, they would actually be controlling their destiny. If they swept and you swept in the final series of the season, they move on. So it is imperative. Look, it's not the end of the road or anything if you don't sweep. But like you said, it's pretty much sweep or bust. I think that's the mindset you have to go into. And that's why I was so surprised, to be honest, Rob. If I'm the New York Mets, and look, you're not coming into this series scared. You're not playing with fear. I would not have made the pitching adjustment that they made, to be honest. They originally had Chris Bassett going tonight against Max Fried, Jacob deGrom on Saturday, Max Scherzer on Sunday. They've adjusted that. I'm not sure I would have done the same, because if Max Fried goes out there and shoves, whatever Jacob deGrom does is going to be irrelevant. And to me, that would have been the biggest advantage for them was Jacob deGrom against Charlie Morton. We've seen Morton be good. We've seen Morton be bad. I was really surprised that they're risking a wasted start from deGrom there. And maybe they're trying to set the tone. Maybe they're trying to end things here in regards to the NL East on a Friday night. But, boy, I mean, the winner of tonight, I think, does have a real chance to sweep this series.
So let's talk about tonight's game, Fried versus deGrom. It is interesting in that deGrom's numbers are really good. A 42% K rate. He is walking fewer than 4%. He's got a 2.93 ERA at this point, and he has been exceptional in his last 2 times out against Atlanta. Dominated the Braves, but he went 1-1 in those 2 after Seth Lugo gave up the hit to, who was it? I think Michael Harris, that drove in the game winner in the last one. So the Braves, despite having limited success at the dish against deGrom, have been good against the Mets in games deGrom's been there. How critical is it for them to chase deGrom out of this game as early as possible to allow Max Fried a little breathing room? Is that the strategy tonight?
Well, there's a couple things that go into play, and you want to work backwards first, right? Like, you can't let this game get to the 9th inning, not with the closer that the Mets had. If you're in the 9th inning, it may as well consider it a lost cause. So you've got a couple of innings there to play with. If deGrom gets off to a good start, right, he rolls you up first time through the order, maybe even halfway through the second time through. 4th or 5th inning, you've got to start to get his pitch count up. You've got to start to get in to some of that middle relief, because if you get to Edwin Diaz at the end of the game, Rob, we've seen what's going on there in New York. It's like it was Rivera back with the Yankees. I mean, that's how good Diaz has been. So you've got to figure out a way to run deGrom, as you mentioned, somewhere in the 5th, 6th, 7th inning. Work the count. We've seen a lot of poor at-bats. Ronald Acuna Jr. coming up, first pitch swinging. Matt Olson, who's been in a horrific slump, hopefully pulling out of that. First pitch, pops it right up or swings off of it, grounds over it. So, you've got to run the count. You've got to work it the way Dansby does, the way Michael Harris does. Get that pitch count up. deGrom, we know, is a strikeout guy. He wants to attack the zone. So you're going to have opportunities to swing, but you're also going to have opportunities. Strikeout pitchers are not always the most efficient. We consider it a Maddox, right? Complete game under 100 pitches. He would rarely strike out more than 3 or 4 guys because it was efficient to get them to ground out or pop out. So there's an opportunity for the Braves to run that pitch count high and get to those middle relievers. But we've got to see better at-bats, especially for some of the stars.
We're talking to Abe Gordon. He is a producer and host on 92.9 The Game in Atlanta as the Bravos get set to host the Mets in a 3-game series. And we'll get to game 2 here in just a second, Abe. But what is the value of the Braves finding a way past Jacob deGrom today? If they can get the win and set that tone against the best the Mets have to offer, especially with the Mets kind of shuffling up the rotation to get deGrom up front, does that boost confidence a little bit in games 2 and 3 Saturday and Sunday?
The Mets have been sitting here for the most part all season leading the Atlanta Braves hearing the national discussion, the Mets are going to collapse. The Mets are going to be the Mets. They're going to this, they're going to that. This is the moment for them to prove all of that wrong. And if Jacob deGrom goes out and gets beat in the first game, that doubt starts to creep in. And even more so because the Braves have handled Max Scherzer decently well throughout his career, not just with the Mets, but going back to D.C. and his time there. He's barely above 500 against the Braves in his career. And I believe he's lower than 500 since starting like 4-0 against them in the first couple of years in D.C. So, I mean, the doubt starts to creep in. One, you keep the crowd into it too, right? I mean, like the energy tonight is going to be ridiculous. And then it's only going to multiply if you take game one tonight moving into game two on Saturday. So there are a lot of aspects beyond just, winning one game that comes into play if the Braves can win. And then also just moving forward, the confidence, even if you don't end up sweeping, even if you don't end up winning the NL East, if you take 2 or 3 in this series, especially if those 2 are against Scherzer and deGrom, the confidence you have in the playoffs, should you see them, has got to be at an all-time high.
Abe Gordon from 92.9 The Game in Atlanta joining us to talk a little Braves baseball here. Let's get to Game 2 on Saturday. The scheduled pitchers, Max Scherzer taking on Kyle Wright. Now, Scherzer has been very good, not quite as good as Jacob deGrom. Scherzer has made 2 starts since he had the same issue that Spencer Strider is dealing with that sore oblique. But in those 2 starts, he has been exceptional. 4 hits and 16 strikeouts across 12 innings. He has faced the Braves 3 times this season, 10 hits, 5 runs, 28 Ks in 20 and a third. I'm actually with Kyle Wright going, who has been fantastic so far this year, by the way. Probably the most underappreciated pitcher in Major League Baseball is Kyle Wright. I'm more worried about Scherzer in Game 2 than I am in deGrom in Game 1, regardless of the outcome of Game 1. Is that founded?
Yeah, I think so. I think at the end of the day, you're going to win this series. Max Fried and Jacob deGrom is fine. But Kyle Wright has got to step up. And I know we talk about the 20 wins, only pitcher in baseball to put up that number so far. It's a pretty good ERA. It's a career year for him, no doubt about it. But you've got to prove it when it really counts in October. And by default, this will be a game played on October 1st. You're referencing Kyle Wright starting tomorrow. This is where the real money is made. This is where you really make your name, stake your claim. And so for Kyle Wright, it's a big moment. I'm not sure if I really trust him in that moment yet, and that's what concerns me. But going back, I don't think this is about deGrom or Fried. I don't think it's about Scherzer or Bassett or Wright or even Charlie Morton. It's about the Atlanta Braves offense. I don't think you want to be in a situation where you're playing a 2-1 game and try and eke it out there. You've got to be hitting. And we've seen the Braves go on runs. I mean, they had 8 runs in 2 of the 3 games there. Just this past week. And so you've got to win this game with offense. You've got to start to really tack on the runs. I don't think the Mets can match you. Pete Alonso's hitting everything that's thrown in the zone right now. Frankie Lindor's doing some damage. But as a team, the Mets cannot keep up with you on offense if your guys are hitting. So this is where we get to Matt Olson's slump, Austin Riley's slump. What type of a bat is Acuna putting up there? Because it can't be Dansby and Michael Harris throughout this whole series. It's got to be up and down the lineup, William Contreras, Travis d'Arnaud, all of it. So I think, honestly, the pitching's great, but if the Braves are going to win this series, it's got to be in the 4, 5, 6 or more run era. I don't think you're doing this 2-1 against the Mets.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. We talked about this a little earlier in the week, Abe. It has been the 1-0, the 2-1, the 3-2 games that have kind of been a bugaboo for Atlanta. Basically, the Braves kind of, and I hate to simplify this much, but it feels like the bats are hot, the Braves win, the bats are cold, the Braves lose. Is there any indication to you after dropping that 10-inning game, although winning the series against the Nationals, what is the trigger? What is the key, if we found one, to making sure that the bats are awake in this, the most important series of the season, without a doubt?
Well, there's a couple aspects to this, and there was that rumor about, once the hurricane was rolling through and they didn't know where it would come through Atlanta, how much it would hit Atlanta, that there was a possibility that they moved up the series and started it on Thursday. And this certainly would have been an advantage for the Mets. And here's why this is relevant. The Braves had not had an off day in 13 days, while in that span, the Mets had 2 off days. This was a very important day off yesterday for the Atlanta Braves to get back home, take a day, recover, reset, mentally prepare for what is the biggest series of the season. And we've seen Acuna start to get going a little bit after a couple days off with some back issues. We've seen a couple of signs that maybe Matt Olson is coming to life. Still need Austin Riley to come around. But, yeah, I think the Braves offense is ready to get going. I think being home again is something that really matters for this team at this point in the season. The energy is going to be, like I said, one of the best atmospheres in baseball tonight. I mean, certainly, go through a season, they've got great crowds throughout. But tonight is going to be something special. It's the only real game, again, that has a ton of significance for both teams. You talk about some of the races throughout the playoffs and throughout baseball. It's really just this one. I know there's some back end of the wild card stuff no one cares about. This is where all of baseball's eyes are turned to tonight. And so I think it's a chance for the Braves to remind people, hey, we're the defending World Series champions. And so, yeah, we're playing good baseball. Hey, they're playing good baseball too. You got to beat good teams in the playoffs. And like we said, the playoffs start now for the Atlanta Braves.
We're talking to Abe Gordon from 92.9 The Game in Atlanta. Last one before we cut you loose. Abe, let's say the Braves go 2 of 3. Let's say they don't get the sweep. They take 2 of 3. Obviously, they've got the 3-game series against Miami to end up. If we go 2 of 3, what are the odds that we end up with a 2 seed? And after that, I saw a tweet that you put up earlier in the week that said you actually think that if the Braves end up winning the wild card spot and not the 2 seed, that it could help the Braves in their quest to repeat. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I'm working through this theory. I got to hash it out, and so I'll do that with you and your listeners right now. So in theory, I've always said the one team that doesn't scare me in the playoffs is San Diego. There's no reason you should lose a series to San Diego. They're coming here. You get 3 games. Hopefully Spencer Strider's back. You should roll right through Musgrove and Darvish, and Juan Soto hasn't been very good. So let's pretend you advance. Would you rather face the Dodgers, who at however many wins they got, 107 or whatever it is, I think are undoubtedly the best team in baseball? Would you rather face them in a 5-game series or a 7-game series, knowing that the longer a series that goes, the less fluky it is? I think you actually have an advantage against the Dodgers only having to beat whoever they're throwing out there one time. I know Kershaw may not pitch again. Walker Buehler's out. I think you have an advantage there in a shorter series, and where maybe you do have a great outing from a Kyle Ryder or Max Fried. You could take a game and their offense can't get going. And then on the flip side, if you advance and the Mets advance, the longer the series, the better, because their strength is in those top 2 guys, in Scherzer or DeGrom. I think you actually have a massive, massive advantage over the Mets in a 3rd and 4th starter, especially, again, if Spencer Strider's back. But even not, Bryce Elder has been outstanding. So I think the longer a series is against the Mets, the better off you are. And I think the shorter a series is against the Dodgers, the better off you are. So I'm trying to spin this in a way that I actually think this could work out in the Braves' favor if they do finish as a wild card, not the NL East champs.
Love it. Love it. Abe Gordon from 92.9 The Game in Atlanta joining us here on The Rob Brown Show and the Fan Upstate. Make sure that you give him a follow on the social media at Abe Gordon, because he got to the Twitter game quick. Abe, appreciate you, big dog.
Hey, anytime you need me, let me know, man. Have a great weekend.
Yeah, book it. Playoff baseball. You'll be back. You'll be back. Abe Gordon from 92.9 The Game in Atlanta. Appreciate his time as always. Let's take a break. We'll come back, take a look up and down some of my favorite games from the NFL football slate, the college football slate, and more on The Rob Brown Show and the Fan Upstate.
Okay, you and Chris Lewis talked about
Greenville Triumph.
What is it?
Greenville Triumph.
Greenville Triumph?
Yep.
And his last name is what?
Lewis, Lewis.
No. The Abe.
Gordon.
Abe Gordon. Abe Gordon. I got it. Greenville. Greenville Triumph with Chris Lewis. Fresh. Oh, come on. That's what I hate about ROC. It takes forever to load.
Yep.
And then I forget. And I mean, that little time I'll forget, like, oh, what was I going to put? Save and publish. Edit. Just want to make sure that it's public. And save. All right. I use the restroom. I'll be right back.
Yep.
Okay. All right. That was forward with Abe Gordon. All right. Now, And now.
Steve, I very much wish that I had the power that you think that I do. They're in London. It's long distance. I make radio money. I don't have long distance phone call to London money, unfortunately. Get Abe's name down. I appreciate his time, though, obviously. Chris said our daughter played soccer in Spartanburg Stadium. It is unreal. It is unreal. Their hospitality box is as nice as some of the D1 boxes I've been in. He said, that being said, Dorman's facilities are top-notch and their soccer pitch is pristine. Yeah, I'm excited to get to Dorman. McFadden from Clemson told me that Dorman's like playing at a Division I college. It's like a TV in the player locker room style facility. All right, headed towards the end of the radio broadcast today. Let's take a look up and down our college football schedule. Got a few games going on tonight. Top 15 team Washington is at UCLA. That's really the only game of significance this evening. Saturday slate is very interesting. Michigan is at Iowa, an Iowa offense that is, what's the word I'm looking for here? Bad at football. They're allergic to touchdowns at this point, but they're at home and their back's against the wall. They've gotten rid of an offensive coordinator. Maybe that changes it enough. Tell you what I'm interested at noon. How about Kentucky Ole Miss? How about Lane and the boys in the Grove welcoming Kentucky? Good news here for South Carolina is not only in moving your game from Saturday to Thursday, not only do you give yourself a couple of extra days of prep for Kentucky, but this one might be a slugfest, right? I mean, if you're fortunate, Kentucky gets into a dogfight here, maybe has a bit of a hangover game after a top 14 matchup. Number 18, Oklahoma is at TCU. Of course, Oklahoma dropped their first and only contest of the year last week, losing to Kansas State, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, Kansas State. That's a big one. That's a big one. Oklahoma with Brent Venables in the first year, dropping an unexpected one. They'll look to rebound. Purdue's at number 21, Minnesota, Texas Tech at now ranked Kansas State. At home, Georgia State's at Army, Illinois, Wisconsin, Louisville at Boston College. These are all your new games. Navy at Air Force, Temple at Memphis, Texas State at James Madison, and Oregon State at number 12, Utah. This one is kind of interesting as well. Oregon State gave a top 10 team, USC, all that they wanted last week. USC, the Trojans, get out of Dodge on a wild one with a late touchdown. 17-14, your final there. But Oregon State put up 68 against Montana State. They beat Fresno State on the road 35-32, and they beat Boise and doubled them up to open the season. Oregon State is really interesting at number 12, Utah at 2 o'clock in the evening. Alabama at Arkansas. Listen, Alabama is going to go into this game as a favorite. In fact, I'm going to see if I can pull the line on this one for you real quick, right? Alabama's going in as a heavy favorite in this one. ESPN's Football Power Index is giving the Crimson Tide a 93% chance of winning this game. 93% chance according to the FPI. And the FPI is not the end-all be-all, but those folks got a lot of factors they plug in. Bama is a 17-point favorite against Arkansas. Alabama is good, really good. 55-3 winners over Vandy. Put up 63 against UL Monroe. But I go back to that game against Texas. A 2019 dub, barely, against the Longhorns. Why do I feel like in Fayetteville, in front of the Hogs, this is a little bit of a trap game for the Crimson Tide. They have Texas A&M next Saturday. Texas A&M knocked off the Crimson Tide last year. Their only loss on the season outside of the national championship game against Georgia. Why do I feel, and listen, Nick Saban's Tide, they don't usually lose focus. That's kind of Nick Saban's whole thing. That's kind of their whole thing, right? But why do I feel like the Crimson Tiders on that team maybe get caught looking ahead to A&M in a bit of a revenge game? 3:30, Arkansas hosts Bama, and I am interested in this one. Oklahoma State's a top 10 team. They are on the road at number 16, Baylor in this one. Wake Forest. We got an interesting ACC matchup down in Tallahassee, Florida this weekend. The Florida State Seminoles are 4-0 on the season, ladies and gentlemen. They beat LSU. They smoked BC. They went into Louisville and walked out of there with a walk-off INT. And they did what they needed to do, beating Duquesne by 40. The Noles are 4-0 right now. Wake Forest, on the flip side, Wake Forest is 3-1. Their only loss, of course, against Clemson in an overtime L, double overtime L last week. The FPI gives FSU a 73.5% chance of winning this game. Okay? 3-1 odds. Here's why this is interesting to me. If FSU wins this game against Wake Forest, next week, they are at NC State. They will be coming off of an NC State team that I think is going to get beat up on a little bit by Clemson this weekend, right? So NC State will have Clemson. I think Clemson beats up on Dave Doran's Wolfpack. Then they get FSU. There is a chance that the Noles could welcome the Clemson Tigers down to Tallahassee and be 6-0 when they do. But it starts with Wake. If they find a way past Wake Forest, that FSU-Clemson game on October 15th, that's a game I've been telling you Clemson fans to keep an eye on since preseason, right? I felt like FSU maybe turned a bit of a corner. They're 4-0 for the first time in like a lot of years, right? And playing pretty good ball, running the ball really, really well right now. Remember, FSU Clemson last year, the Noles came to Death Valley, and Clemson had to gut out a win at home last year. Now you got to go down to Tallahassee. Florida State has now, and again, selling out a game is not a guarantee that the stadium's at full capacity. But FSU announced that they sold out the Florida game, right? That's where FSU fans are right now. Doak Campbell's not going to be an easy place to play when Clemson goes down there, especially if the Noles knock off Wake. That'd be a top 25 win. Especially if Clemson does FSU a favor and beats up on Wake Forest this weekend. Then the Noles, if they beat Wake and NC State, a pair of back-to-back top 10 games or top 25 games, Clemson at Florida State looks a lot more interesting in 3 weeks. A couple of other games coming down the pipe. Vatech is at North Carolina at 3:30. The Citadel's at Appalachian State. Interesting in that one is Appalachian State, who beat Texas A&M a couple of weeks ago, then turns around and loses at home against James Madison. Diesel is in shambles. Texas A&M is at Mississippi State at 4 o'clock. Some other games coming up. LSU at Auburn. I'm actually really interested in that game. Not because it's a game of huge importance. LSU's 3-1. Auburn is 3-1. I'm interested because everybody wrote off LSU after they lost to Florida State. Turns out maybe Florida State's kind of good, right? And now all of a sudden, LSU and Brian Kelly's first year, maybe they get a little forgiveness for a blocked PAT getting them walked off against Florida State, right? Maybe FSU's good. Maybe LSU gets a little bit of credit, a little bit of forgiveness for dropping that game. LSU has now won 3 in a row, including an SEC win over Mississippi State, where they beat up on the Bulldogs and won me some money, by the way, 31-16. And the flip side, the Auburn Tigers are looking at Brian Harsin right now, right? They escaped Mizzou thanks to a goal line fumble in OT. They got smoked by Penn State. Brian Harsin's feet are at the fire right now. Brian Kelly's Tigers are not in the midst of a demise. LSU at Auburn, FPI is giving LSU a 75% chance to win this game on Saturday night. That is really interesting. That game might be on the big screen at 7 p.m. Also, at 7:30, well, at 7:30, Georgia is at Mizzou. Look, Georgia's going to win that game by 35, right? What you're looking for if you are the Gamecocks here is make sure that Georgia does to Mizzou what they did to you. This one's at Missouri. Make sure that Georgia gets a fat win in both Columbias. That way, A, you feel a little bit better about what Georgia did to you, and B, you feel a little bit better about your chances of going to the other Columbia and getting a win. NC State's at Clemson. We talked about that one. Kicks off at 7:30. Georgia Tech at Pitt at 8 p.m. Arizona State's at USC at 10:30. Of course, Arizona State has removed the duties of head coach from Herm Edwards, fired him in the end zone after an L. So that one should be fine for the Trojans. Good opportunity for them to go up and put up about 1,000 points on the Sun Devils. That one's at the Coliseum in LA. Kickoff at 10:30 Eastern. And then Stanford at number 13, Oregon. How about an 11 p.m. kickoff live from Eugene? Don't call me Saturday night. I'll be watching football until about 2 a.m. Come at me, bro. Come at me, bro. So there's your schedule and the games that I like and why they have a little bit of meaning. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll take a look up and down the NFL weekend schedule as well. I'll give you some more thoughts on some of the bigger games and why they matter there. And then we wrap this bad boy up and call it a week. That's next on the Rob Brown Show on the Fan Upstate.
There we go. Oh, I hate when it does this. There we go. guys do on this? Somebody's changed. So let's just.
Yeah, I got a feeling a lot of folks around us are going to be saying that this afternoon there, Steven. I'm intrigued to see when the rain. I'm getting out of here as soon as I can. The wind's starting to blow and the clouds are moving in, so I'm out of here ASAP when this show is over. I'll be working from home this afternoon, kids. Wrapping up our week of broadcasting here on the show, ladies and gentlemen, let's take a look down our weekend schedule in the National Football League. That's pretty good, Chris Berman. It's like a B plus, Chris Berman. Minnesota is at New Orleans to kick off our NFL Sunday, 9:30 a.m. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you, the Vikings are going to dog walk the Saints in this one. All right. It's not going to be pretty. Michael Thomas is out. Jarvis Landry got banged up. He may have to play the one and play the one hurt. The good news is we saw the breakout game of Chris Olave last week. I'm going to tell you right now, the spread is Vikings -3. Grab that. Lock that in. Make some cheddar if you've got the ability to do so. Because if that line doesn't move to 5.5 by Sunday morning's kickoff, I will be stunned, my dudes. Stunned. Locking in at -3. Vikings are going to dog walk the Saints on Sunday morning. Then we get going with our 1 o'clock slate. Cleveland is at Atlanta. I find this game very interesting because the Browns and Atlanta are pretty much level. FPI gives the Falcons a 51% chance to win this game. The Falcons are 1-2. Remember back in week 1, Saints at full strength, they got walked off on a field goal. They gave everything they had to the Rams and they knocked off the Seahawks. And week 3, the Browns, on the other hand, are 2-1. They barely escaped at Carolina on a walk-off field goal. They lost to the Jets, and they got smoked by the Steelers. I am looking at the line on this game right now. It is Falcons plus 1.5. I'm going to go ahead and tell you right now, I'm betting the Falcons plus 1.5. You're giving me 1.5 for a Cleveland team that barely beat that spread at Carolina, that did not beat that spread against the New York Jets losing outright, and who weren't even close to that spread against the Steelers. Look, Atlanta deserves a little credit right now, okay? Atlanta probably should have beat New Orleans back in week 1. That would make them 2-1. They didn't deserve to beat the Rams, but even though they didn't deserve to beat the Rams, they still gave them a hell of a run. Atlanta plus 1.5. I don't bet on the Falcons. I hate the Falcons. Plus 1.5 against Cleveland at home. Atlanta's got more juice in that building than they've had in years right now. I'm going Falcons plus 1.5. Washington is at Dallas. The Cowboys are 2-1, second in the NFC East. Their only L was to Tampa Bay back in week 1, but they beat the runners-up of last year's Super Bowl, 2017. They beat the Giants down the stretch. They should not have a problem at home against the Washington Commanders. Bum, 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 bum. Hey, how about a game that nobody cares about? How about Seattle and Detroit? I only like this because, ladies and gentlemen, the Detroit Lions ain't good, but they ain't bad. Here is the problem. Don't bet Detroit despite being a hefty favorite. Why? Because Amon-Ra St. Brown is out. DeAndre Swift is out, according to Dan Campbell. St. Brown suffered a sprained ankle against Minnesota. Swift is battling both an ankle injury and an aggravated shoulder sprain. They are missing some dudes. I like Seattle in that game. Tennessee is at Indianapolis. This one's another wild one because the Titans are 1-2. I thought, the Titans would be good. Indy has a 61% chance of winning this game. They are 1-1. They tied with the Texans. They got shut out by the Jags, but then they turned around and they beat the Chiefs. My goodness, beat the Chefs. How about that? I like Indy in that game. Chicago at the Giants. All right, have fun. Jacksonville's at Philly. Y'all, Trevor Lawrence is good. Would you look at that? Maybe. Perchance. Perhaps. Maybe Urban Meyer really did suck that bad at coaching. You know, just like Rob Brown said that he did. Mark Ryan had to buy me a drink because I told him Herb wasn't making it out of year 1. He didn't believe me. Lonzo has done everything in his power to try to protect former Ohio State coach Urban Meyer. I told you guys he was that bad of a guy and he was going to get run out of the league because you can terrorize your players at the college football level as long as you're winning. Nobody's going to say anything. And Herb made a career out of that. You're not terrorizing NFL players, right? Those guys are on your level. College players ain't on your level. NFL players are. Trevor Lawrence is 77 of 111. He is sitting one completion effectively shy of a 70% completion percentage. Through these games so far, he has thrown for 772 yards, averaging 7 yards of completion, averaging 257 plus yards per game, 6 touchdowns, 1 interception. He has been sacked twice and has a season rating of 103.1. Ladies and gentlemen, Trevor Lawrence is good at football. It was all Urban Meyer's fault. And now the Jags are at the Eagles, the only remaining undefeated football team. The Eagles are the better team. The Eagles are expected to win. The line on this game, let me go pull the line on this game because I'm actually curious because this might be a game that people are sleeping on the Jags. I think a lot of people are ignoring the Jags because the Jags have been so bad for so long that now that the Jags are actually putting points on the board, people are a little shocked. And don't get me wrong, I hate the Jacksonville Jaguars. I hate that city, but I'm pulling for Travis and Trevor. Jacksonville plus 6.5. Plus 6.5. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm taking the Jags plus 6.5 points, my dudes. I love that line. Jacksonville plus 6.5. New York Jets at Pittsburgh. Okay. Buffalo at Baltimore. This one might be good. The Bills lost to the Dolphins last week. It was a shocker. But the Dolphins also beat the Ravens, remember, right? So people are freaking out about this. Buffalo is -3. Now, I'm not touching that game. I don't want no part of that game because Lamar Jackson is in show-off mode right now, right? Lamar is playing for his guaranteed money that he wants, that quarter bill he wants all guaranteed. But, on the other hand, and hear me out on this argument, Josh Allen. LA is at Houston, Arizona at Carolina in the 4:05 time slot. If you want to hear a breakdown of that game, ladies and gentlemen, please go to your podcast provider of choice or the Odyssey app and download the Views from Mint Street podcast. Lonzo and I host Odyssey's official Carolina Panther podcast, Views from Mint Street. We'll be dropping another episode this afternoon. This afternoon's drop is our preview pod. It's the game where we will look ahead at the Arizona game. Yesterday, Joseph Vasquez is the host of the Arizona podcast, Kickoff in the Valley. He joined us. We have recorded that interview. Lonzo and I will give our thoughts as well as that interview with Mr. Vasquez. And you can listen to all of that this afternoon. We'll be cutting our podcast right after the show. It'll drop sometime later this afternoon. Make sure you subscribe and download to the Views from Mint Street podcast, available where major podcasts are found. We'll give you all the Arizona at Carolina talk. New England at Green Bay. No Mac Jones. Green Bay should win that one easy. Denver at Las Vegas could be interesting because the Vegas Raiders are really not happy about their performance. And then finally, Sunday night, the game we've been looking forward to for a while, Kansas City at Tampa Bay. Kansas City coming off of that loss. The Bucs are not scoring points right now. Wow. That's a good one because both of these teams have floundered a little bit. So we'll see how it plays out. T2, thanks for your work this week, buddy. You did an awesome job. I appreciate it.
It was my pleasure, man.
Ladies and gentlemen, have a great weekend. Make sure you follow me on social media at The Rob Brown Show. I will be tweeting a lot because I can't go anywhere this weekend. Y'all stay safe out there this evening as the rain passes us. We'll see you back here Monday to do it all over again. Thanks for listening to The Rob Brown Show right here on the Fan Upstate. Later, brother. Brandon, I'm taking your Falcons. I'm taking your Falcons this weekend. Don't let me down. All right, guys. Y'all are awesome. I appreciate